The conference room fell silent as Lieutenant Hana Kim stood up. 23 years old and fresh from the academy, she cleared her throat nervously. Around the long metal table sat officers with decades of combat experience. Some were human, others belonged to alien species she had only read about in textbooks. All of them looked at her with barely hidden annoyance. "Permission to speak, sir?" Hana directed her question to Admiral Minho Choi, who sat at the head of the table. The admiral waved his hand dismissively. "Make it quick, Lieutenant. We have an actual crisis to deal with." Hana pulled up a holographic display from her datapad. "I've been studying the Vakrian attack patterns on the mining colonies. Their formations follow cultural honor codes. If we adjust our defensive positions to account for their hierarchical battle structure, we could—" "That's enough." Commander Doyan Park cut her off sharply. The older man leaned back in his chair with a cold smile. "This isn't the academy anymore, Kim. Real battles don't follow your textbook theories. But, sir, the pattern is clear. The Vakrians won't attack positions they consider dishonorably weak. If we, Lieutenant—" Captain Tyvan's insectoid voice clicked and buzzed through the translator. His multifaceted eyes reflected the room's harsh lights. "You graduated 3 months ago. Some of us have fought the Vakrians for 20 years. Do you truly believe you understand them better than we do?" Hana felt heat rise to her cheeks. "No, sir. I just thought that maybe a fresh perspective might—" "A fresh perspective?" Commander Park laughed. "Is that what they're calling inexperience these days?" Several officers chuckled. "Listen, rookie. When you've actually been in combat, when you've seen your friends die because someone made the wrong tactical call, then maybe we'll consider your opinions. Until then, focus on learning how real battles work instead of playing war games." Hana sat down quickly, her heart pounding. Across the table, Ensign Jiwan Lai gave her a sympathetic look but said nothing. No one wanted to associate with the academy graduate who thought she knew better than veterans. Admiral Choi pulled up the tactical map. "We deploy standard defensive formation around the colonies. Battle Group Alpha takes point. Beta and Gamma provide support. Any questions that aren't based on classroom theory?" No one spoke. The meeting ended 10 minutes later. Hana gathered her datapad and left quickly, trying to ignore the whispers behind her. She had heard them all before during her 3 months aboard the GCS Horizon's Edge. Too young, too inexperienced. Only got this posting because of her test scores. Book smart, but no real instincts. The massive dreadnought's corridors were busy with crew members rushing to battle stations. Through the viewport windows, Hana could see other coalition ships moving into formation. Somewhere out there, the Vakrian Empire's forces were attacking human colonies. People were dying, and she had a solution that no one would listen to. Don't take it personally. Jiwan caught up with her near the crew quarters. The young engineer had been Hana's only real friend since she came aboard. "Commander Park is harsh on everyone. He's especially harsh on me," Hana said quietly. "They all are. You did graduate top of your class in both strategy and xenopsychology. That makes people nervous, especially the older officers who came up through combat rather than academics. My grades don't matter if no one will listen to my ideas." Hana stopped at her quarters door. "I spent 2 years studying Vakrian culture. I know I'm right about their attack patterns. But I'm just the rookie who thinks she knows everything." Jiwan squeezed her shoulder. "Maybe you'll get another chance to prove yourself." Hana doubted it. She entered her small quarters and sat on the narrow bed, staring at her datapad. The Vakrian cultural analysis was still there, ignored and dismissed. She had mapped 17 battle patterns that all correlated with their honor codes. She had even identified potential weaknesses in their command structure. But none of it mattered if no one would listen. The ship hummed around her as the engines powered up. Through her small viewport, She watched the fleet move into defensive positions. They were using the standard formation, the same one that had worked for decades against various enemies. But the Vakrians weren't like other enemies. They had their own logic, their own values, their own way of seeing battle. Hours passed. Hannah tried to rest, but couldn't. Her mind kept running through scenarios, each one showing how the current defensive strategy would fail against Vakrian, honor-based tactics. Then the alarm started blaring. Hannah jumped to her feet and rushed into the corridor. Red emergency lights flashed. The ship's intercom crackled to life with Captain Tyven's voice. All hands to battle stations. 3 colony defense stations have fallen. Vakrian forces have broken through the outer perimeter. This is not a drill. The hallway filled with running crew members. Hannah made her way to the tactical center, her clearance badge getting her past security. The large room was chaos. Officers shouted orders. Holographic displays showed the battle unfolding in real time. And it was going exactly as Hannah had feared. The Vakrian forces were exploiting gaps in the coalition formation. Not random gaps, but specific ones that aligned with their cultural view of honorable combat. They weren't taking the most tactically sound routes. They were taking the routes that their honor code demanded they take. Losses mounting in Sector 7, someone reported. Battle Group Alpha requesting reinforcements. Admiral Choi stood at the center command station, his face grim. Pull Beta Group to support. Maintain defensive perimeter. Sir, they're predicting our movements, another officer said. Every time we reinforce a position, they shift to exploit a new gap. Hannah wanted to scream. This was exactly what she had tried to warn them about. The Vakrians weren't fighting a standard tactical battle. They were fighting an honor battle, and the coalition didn't understand the rules. Commander Park noticed her standing near the doorway. Lieutenant Kim, unless you have something useful to contribute, get to your assigned station. I do have something useful, Hannah said before she could stop herself. The Vakrians are following their honor codes. If we adjust our formation to account for, not this again. Park turned back to the displays. We don't have time for theories, Lieutenant. On the main screen, another coalition ship exploded in a burst of light. Hannah watched, helpless and frustrated. She knew what needed to be done. She knew how to stop this. But she was just the rookie, and no one would listen. The intercom crackled again, this time with an edge of panic in the voice. Long-range sensors detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Multiple capital ships emerging. A pause then. Sir, it's a second Vakrian fleet. 3 times larger than the first. Their flagship? It's the Crimson Sovereign. The tactical center went silent. Every officer present knew that name. The Crimson Sovereign belonged to War Prince Kyle, the most feared military commander in the Vakrian Empire. He had conquered 14 star systems. He had never lost a battle. And now he was here. Admiral Choi's face went pale. Even Captain Tyven's usually steady clicking voice wavered as he spoke. We're outnumbered 4-1. Outgunned, and now facing their best commander. Hannah stared at the holographic display, showing the approaching armada. Somewhere in that massive fleet was War Prince Kale, coming to finish what his forces had started. The coalition was about to face total defeat, and she was powerless to stop it, the rookie who knew. The answer, but couldn't make anyone listen. The coalition fleet scrambled into defensive positions around the planet Arcos 7. 40 million colonists lived on that world, most of them human families who had built farms and cities far from Earth. Now they huddled in underground shelters while war raged in the space above them. Hannah stood at her assigned monitoring station in the tactical center, watching the battle unfold on her screen. The Vakrian fleet moved with precision and purpose. Their ships formed patterns that looked random to most coalition officers, but made perfect sense to Hana. They were following the ancient formations described in Kora's Vacrian military poetry, turning warfare into a kind of deadly art. Cruiser Group Delta is taking heavy fire, someone reported. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Admiral Choi gripped the edge of his command station. Route auxiliary power to their shields. Pull them back behind the main battle line. But the Vacrians anticipated the move. Their ships shifted smoothly, cutting off the escape route. The cruisers fought desperately, but one by one their shields failed. Bright explosions lit up the darkness of space. Hana felt sick. Each explosion meant hundreds of crew members dead. All because the coalition was fighting a standard battle against an enemy that didn't follow standard rules. 6 hours into the engagement, the losses mounted. 8 cruisers destroyed. 2 battleships crippled. Thousands dead. The Vacrians pressed their advantage, their hammer and anvil formation, crushing the coalition's defensive perimeter like a vice, and the horizon's edge shuddered violently. Direct hit to the port side. Captain Tyven's voice remained calm despite the chaos. Damage reports coming in from all decks. Another impact, stronger this time. The lights in the tactical center flickered. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Fire on the command deck, someone shouted. Multiple casualties in tactical command. Admiral Choi's voice came through the intercom, strained and urgent. All senior officers to emergency stations. We've lost primary tactical coordination. The main holographic display went dark. Backup systems struggled to come online. Through the confusion, Hannah heard Commander Park's voice over the comm. Medic to Sector 12. Commander Park is down. Repeat, Commander Park is down. Captain Tyven clicked rapidly, his species equivalent of stressed breathing. Half of his senior staff was dead or injured. The battle was falling apart. The Vacrians were winning. Lieutenant Kim, the captain's multifaceted eyes fixed on Hana. Your tactical coordination for this sector. Temporary assignment. Hannah's heart jumped. Sir, I'm not qualified for. You're the only tactical officer in this room still standing. I don't care about your qualifications. We need someone now. He turned away. Get to the auxiliary tactical station and coordinate our remaining ships. That's an order. Hana ran to the station, her hands shaking as she pulled up the tactical displays. 9 coalition ships remained in their sector, all damaged, all fighting desperately against superior numbers. The Vacrian formation pressed in like a closing fist. She took a deep breath and studied the pattern. The Vacrians were using a variation of the storm wind formation, named after a famous Vacrian battle poem. They were dividing the coalition forces into smaller groups, isolating them for destruction. It was elegant. It was efficient. And Hannah knew exactly how to counter it. All ships in Sector 9, she spoke into the comm, trying to keep her voice steady. Prepare for formation shift on my mark. Who is this? A gruff voice responded. Where's Commander Park? This is Lieutenant Kim. I have temporary tactical command for this sector. Silence. Then, you're the rookie? The one who just graduated? Yes, sir. And I need you to trust me. I know what I'm doing. This is insane. Another captain muttered over the shared channel, but Captain Tyven's voice cut through the doubt. Follow Lieutenant Kim's orders. We don't have time for debate. Hannah's fingers flew over the controls. I'm sending you new coordinates. You're going to break formation and create apparent gaps in our defensive line. I know it looks wrong, but trust me. Create gaps? That's suicide. No, Hannah said firmly. It's bait. The Vacrians value formation symmetry. They can't resist exploiting what they see as structural weaknesses. We're going to give them a target they can't refuse. She called up her research files, the ones everyone had dismissed, the cultural analysis, the honor codes, the battle poetry that described how Vakrion commanders thought. It all pointed to one thing. Vakrions would rather pursue an honorable victory than a smart one. "Ensign Lee," Hana called out. "I need you?" Ji-Wan appeared at her side within seconds. "What do you need?" "Run a simulation. I'm going to position our ships in what looks like a broken formation. The Vakrians will see it as chaos and move to exploit it. But it's actually a kill box. Overlapping fields of fire from angles they won't expect." Ji-Wan's fingers danced across her engineering console. "Running numbers now." A pause. "Hannah, this is crazy. If you're wrong, we're all dead. If I do nothing, we're dead anyway." The simulation results appeared. Green lines showing firing arcs. Red zones showing Vakrian approach vectors. The numbers added up. If the Vakrians took the bait, if they followed their cultural programming, this could work. "Simulation shows 63% probability of success," Ji-Wan said quietly. "That's actually not terrible." Captain Tyven studied the holographic display. Every second of delay meant more coalition ships dying. "Lieutenant Kim, if this fails, then it's my responsibility, sir." "I understand." The captain's insectoid face was unreadable. Then he clicked once, sharply. "Do it." Hannah opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships in Sector 9, execute formation shift now. Move to coordinates I'm transmitting. Trust the plan." The coalition ships broke formation, moving into positions that looked random and exposed. On the Vakrian side, Hana could see their fleet adjusting. Their commander had noticed the apparent weakness. "They're taking the bait," Ji-Wan whispered. 3 Vakrian dreadnoughts redirecting to our sector. Good. Hana watched the enemy ships approach. "Hold position. Don't fire until they're fully committed." The Vakrian dreadnoughts accelerated, their massive hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. They were moving into the kill box, following exactly the pattern Hana had predicted. Their formation was beautiful, symmetrical, and completely vulnerable. "They're in position," Ji-Wan said. "All ships," Hana's voice rang out clear and strong. "Fire now. Concentrate fire on designated targets." The coalition ships opened up simultaneously. Energy beams and missiles converged from 9 different angles, creating overlapping fields of destruction. The Vakrians had expected a standard frontal assault. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a carefully calculated death trap. The first Vakrian dreadnoughts. Shields collapsed under the coordinated assault. Its hull ruptured, atmosphere venting into space. The second tried to break away, but couldn't maneuver fast enough. Explosions rippled across its surface. "Direct hits on all 3 targets," someone shouted. "The Vakrians are breaking formation." Hannah allowed herself a small smile. The enemy was falling back, their perfect formation shattered. The tactic had worked. Throughout the sector, coalition ships rallied. The momentum shifted. What had been a desperate defense became a counterattack. The Vakrians were experienced and powerful, but they hadn't expected this level of tactical creativity. "Lieutenant Kim," Captain Tyven's voice held a note of respect that hadn't been there before. "Well done." For a brief moment, Hannah felt triumph. She had proven herself. The rookie had saved her sector dot. Then the long-range sensors started screaming alerts. "New contact," the sensor officer's voice shook. "Massive hyperspace signature. It's the Crimson Sovereign. War Prince Kale is here." The main display shifted to show the approaching vessel. It was enormous, larger than any ship Hannah had ever seen. Surrounded by an escort fleet that dwarfed the Coalition's remaining forces. "Second Vakrian fleet entering attack range," another officer reported. "Count is—" "Oh no." Count is over 200 capital ships. The tactical center went silent. Hana's victory suddenly felt meaningless. They had won a battle, but they were about to lose the war. Admiral Choi's weary voice came over the speakers. All remaining ships form up for defensive formation. Prepare for final engagement. Hana stared at the holographic display. Somewhere in that massive fleet was War Prince Kale, the undefeated commander, the philosopher warrior who had written about the nature of honor and conquest, the one who had never lost a battle in 30 years of warfare. And now the coalition had to face him with a broken, battered fleet barely hanging on. The emergency council meeting felt like a funeral. Admiral Choi sat with his head in his hands. Captain Tyven stood motionless, his insectoid form rigid with stress. The other senior officers, who had survived the battle, looked exhausted and defeated. Ammunition reserves at 17%, someone reported quietly. Hull integrity compromised on 60% of remaining ships. Medical facilities overwhelmed. How long until reinforcements arrive? Admiral Choi asked. 6 days, sir? If they come at full speed. We don't have 6 days. We have maybe 6 hours before Kale's fleet is ready to attack. The admiral looked around the room. We're beaten. The only question is whether we surrender to save the colonists or fight to the last ship. Vakrians don't take prisoners, Captain Tyven said. Their honor code demands they enslave conquered populations. Surrender only delays the inevitable. Then we fight. Admiral Choi's voice was hollow. And 40 million civilians die when we fail. Hana sat in the corner, officially present because she now held temporary tactical command of her sector. But she knew no one wanted to hear from the rookie right now. Still, an idea was forming in her mind. A crazy, impossible idea based on hundreds of hours of research that everyone had dismissed. What if we don't fight? She said quietly. Every head turned toward her. Admiral Choi frowned. Explain yourself, Lieutenant. What if we open communications with War Prince Kale? Challenge him to a negotiation based on Vakrian honor traditions. The room erupted. Officers shouted over each other. Negotiate during combat? That's surrender. The Vakrians will see it as weakness. Silence. Admiral Choi's voice cut through the chaos. He fixed Hana with a hard stare. Lieutenant Kim, you just won your first real battle. Don't throw away that credibility with foolishness. Sir, it's not foolishness. War Prince Kale isn't just a military commander. He's a philosopher within Vakrian society. He's written extensively about the nature of honorable conquest versus hollow victory. You've read his writings? Captain Tyven asked. All of them, sir. Translated them myself as part of my Zenith psychology studies. Kale questions whether endless conquest truly brings glory or just creates empires of resentment. 10 years ago, he wrote a treatise that almost got him executed for heresy. The Vakrian leadership exiled him to military command instead, because his tactical brilliance was too valuable to waste. Admiral Choi leaned forward. What exactly are you proposing? I propose we open a direct channel to War Prince Kale, not to surrender, but to challenge him intellectually. To make him question whether destroying us brings honor or just another inevitable victory. To engage him as a philosopher, not just a warrior. That's career-ending foolishness. Commander Park's voice came from the corner. He was back on duty despite his injuries, his arm in a medical brace. No one negotiates with Vakrians during active combat. They'll interpret it as weakness and show no mercy. Maybe, Hana admitted. But what's our alternative? We can't win militarily. We can't evacuate in time. At least this gives us a chance. Ji-Wan spoke up from her station. Admiral, our engineering sensors show we have maybe 4 hours of combat capability left before critical systems fail across the fleet. We literally have nothing to lose. The Admiral closed his eyes. The weight of 40 million lives pressed down on him. And you think you can engage a legendary warrior philosopher in debate? You're 23 years old. I'm the only person in this fleet who spent 2 years studying his work, Hana said. I've read everything he's written about honor, strength, and worthy adversaries. I understand how he thinks. This is insane. Someone muttered. Captain Tyvin clicked thoughtfully. Sometimes insanity is the only logical option remaining. He looked at the Admiral. Sir, I recommend we authorize Lieutenant Kim's attempt. If it fails, we're no worse off than we already are. Long minutes passed. Finally, Admiral Choi nodded. You have one chance, Lieutenant. One transmission. If he responds, you're our voice. If you fail... He didn't finish the sentence. Hana moved to the communication station. Her hands were steady now, her mind clear. She had spent years preparing for this moment without knowing it. All those late nights reading Vacrian philosophy. All those hours translating their battle poetry. It all came down to this. She composed her message carefully, translating it into formal Vacrian. Not requesting negotiation. Not begging for mercy. Offering a challenge. War Prince Kale, your reputation speaks of seeking worthy conquest, not the slaughter of cornered prey. I wish to discuss whether this battle brings honor to your name, or merely the inevitable crushing of a defeated enemy. I believe you value the distinction. She sent the narrow beam transmission directly toward the Crimson Sovereign. Then they waited. 1 hour passed. The Vacrian fleet held position but didn't attack. Were they preparing for the final assault? Or was Kale considering her message? 2 hours. Admiral Choi paced. Captain Tyvin remained motionless. Hana stared at the communications console, willing it to activate. 3 hours. Some officers began to give up hope. He's not going to respond, Commander Park said. We should prepare our final defense. Then the console lit up. An incoming transmission from the Crimson Sovereign. High priority. Direct from War Prince Kale himself. Put it through, Admiral Choi ordered. The holographic projector activated, and Hana found herself face to face with the most feared military commander in the galaxy. War Prince Kale was massive, easily 8 feet tall. His scales were dark blue-gray, marked with scars from countless battles. His eyes were golden and sharp, missing nothing. He wore armor decorated with symbols of his victories. I am War Prince Kale. His voice was deep and resonant, speaking perfect human standard. Which one of you dares to question my honor? Hana stepped forward, trying not to show fear. I do, War Prince. Lieutenant Hana Kim of the Coalition Fleet. Kale's eyes focused on her. A newly hatched warrior presumes to speak of honor to me? I have conquered 14 star systems. I have commanded fleets for 30 years. What could you possibly teach me? Nothing about warfare, War Prince. But perhaps something about what makes warfare meaningful. Hana took a breath. You wrote in your essay, The Weight of Endless Victory, that true greatness comes not from overwhelming inferior opponents, but from testing oneself against genuine challenges. You questioned whether conquering the weak brings honor or merely confirms what was already known. Kale's expression shifted slightly. Surprise, perhaps. You have read my work. All of it? Including the controversial passages that nearly cost you your life. You wrote, what glory is there in the extinction of potential? Does the hunter gain honor from killing the wolf pup, or from facing the grown wolf who has learned to hunt back? The War Prince was silent for a long moment. No one has quoted my own words to me before, especially not a human, because most people think honor is about winning. You know, it's about the quality of the challenge, the growth that comes from facing a worthy adversary. And you believe humans are worthy adversaries? Kale's tone was skeptical. Your fleet is broken. Your defenses are failing. You have no hope of victory. No, Hannah agreed. We can't defeat you militarily. But that's not what makes us worthy. We're worthy because we don't accept the expected outcome. We're worthy because even facing extinction, we keep trying new approaches. Like this conversation. How many species have ever thought to engage you philosophically instead of just fighting? Kale's golden eyes studied her intently. You are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both, War Prince. But I'm also right. You didn't come here just to add another conquest to your list. You came because you're still searching for what your writings describe. A challenge that matters. An adversary who can surprise you. And you can surprise me? We already have. Your forces expected standard coalition tactics. We gave you something different. It wasn't enough to win, but it was enough to prove we think differently than you expect. The War Prince was quiet again. Then I will propose a test. I will hold fire for 24 hours. In that time, you will demonstrate why humanity deserves to be considered worthy adversaries rather than simply defeated enemies. If you fail, I will show no mercy. If you succeed, he paused. Then perhaps we will have a more interesting conversation. What kind of demonstration? Hannah asked. That is for you to determine. Surprise me, Lieutenant Hana Kim. Show me what makes humans worthy of my philosophical consideration rather than simple conquest. The transmission ended. The tactical center erupted in voices. Some angry, some confused, most simply shocked that it had worked at all. Admiral Choi looked at Hana with a mixture of respect and concern. You just bought us 24 hours. Now what? Hannah stared at the empty holographic space where Kale had been. 24 hours to prove humanity's worth to a genocidal philosopher-warrior. No pressure at all. The next morning, Hannah sat in her quarters surrounded by every piece of research she could find about War Prince Kale. Jiwan had helped her pull files from a dozen different databases. Military records. Philosophical texts. Even personal journals that had been leaked over the years. There has to be something here, Hannah muttered, scrolling through another document. Some clue about what would convince him. Jiwan handed her a cup of coffee. The whole fleet is divided. Half think you're brilliant. Half think you've just delayed the inevitable. Admiral Choi wants to use the 24 hours to prepare defenses. Commander Park wants to evacuate as many civilians as possible. And what do you think? I think you've gotten us this far by understanding Kale better than anyone else. So I trust you. Jiwan pointed to the screen. What's that one? Hannah enlarged the file. It was an old essay Kale had written 15 years ago, before his exile to military command. The title was The Prison of Perfection. She read aloud, We Vacrians have perfected the art of conquest. Our formations are flawless. Our tactics are unbeatable. Our honor code is absolute. And yet, what have we become but a species trapped in our own perfection? We no longer adapt because we no longer need to. We no longer question because questioning is seen as weakness. We conquer endlessly, but we no longer grow. Are we truly strong, or merely locked in patterns we cannot escape? He sounds like he's questioning everything his society stands for, Jiwan said. Exactly. Hannah felt excitement building. Kale isn't just testing humanity. He's testing his own doubts about the Vacrian way. He's looking for proof that there's another path. So what do we show him? Hannah stood up quickly. We show him what makes humans different. Not our military strength, our adaptability, our cooperation across species, our refusal to be limited by what we're supposed to be. She grabbed her datapad. I need to talk to the Admiral. An hour later, Hannah stood before Admiral Choi and the senior staff again. I want to bring War Prince Kale to Arcos 7, to the civilian colony. The room exploded with objections. Bring the enemy commander to a civilian population? That's insane. He'll use it to target civilians more effectively. Admiral Choi raised his hand for silence. Explain your reasoning, Lieutenant. Kale is a philosopher searching for worthy adversaries. He won't find that by looking at our military capabilities, which he already knows are inferior. He'll find it by seeing what makes humans fundamentally different from Vakrians. Our diversity. Our cooperation. Our ability to change and adapt. You want to show weakness to an enemy commander, Commander Park said flatly. No, sir. I want to show strength of a different kind. The strength to build something together, instead of conquering it. The strength to choose cooperation over domination. Captain Tyven clicked thoughtfully. It is unconventional and extremely risky. Everything about this situation is risky, sir. But this is the only approach that makes sense given what I know about Kale's philosophy. He's written extensively about how endless conquest creates hollow empires. He questions whether dominance through force is truly strength. We need to show him an alternative. Admiral Choi was quiet for a long time. If he uses this against us, if he targets the civilians because of what you show him, then I'll take full responsibility, sir. Finally, the Admiral nodded. Make the arrangements. But, Lieutenant, if this goes wrong, it won't just be your career that ends. It'll be 40 million lives. The next morning, a small Vakrian shuttle approached Arcos 7 under strict security protocols. War Prince Kale emerged with 4 honor guards, all armed but not hostile. Coalition security surrounded them, weapons ready but not raised. Kale looked around the landing area with his sharp golden eyes. This is highly irregular. So is philosophical debate in the middle of a war, Hana replied. She wore her dress uniform, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. You asked for a demonstration. I'm going to show you what makes humans worthy. She led Kale and his guards through the colony. Her first stop was the central hospital. The medical facility was crowded with injured from both sides of the conflict. Human doctors worked alongside insectoid medics and crystalline healers. In one room, a Vakrian prisoner of war was having his wounds treated by a human surgeon. Your warriors tend to enemy wounded? Kale asked. We tend to all wounded, Hana corrected. That Vakrian soldier fought against us yesterday. Today, he's a patient. Tomorrow, when he's healed, he'll be held as a prisoner of war according to established protocols. This is weakness. Wasting resources on defeated enemies, is it? Or is it the strength to see beyond immediate conflict? That soldier might be an enemy today, but wars end. And when this one does, how he was treated will matter. Kale said nothing, but his eyes followed the human surgeon carefully stitching a wound in Vakrian flesh. Next, Hannah took him to the education center. Children of a dozen different species sat in classrooms together. Human kids studied next to insectoid young and small crystalline beings. Their teacher was explaining orbital mechanics using a holographic display. They learned together, Kale observed. They learn from each other, Hana said. The insectoid children process mathematical concepts faster. The human children are better at creative problem solving. The crystalline ones have perfect memory. Separately, they're good students. Together, they achieve more than any one species could alone. Vakrian young train separately by caste and capability. And that's efficient for creating specialists. But it doesn't create adaptability. These children will grow up knowing how to work with minds that think differently than theirs. That's a different kind of strength. They continued through the colony. Hana showed Kale the memorial garden where colonists had placed markers, honoring both Coalition and Vakrian dead with equal respect. She showed him the engineering labs where Jiwan and others developed new shield technology not through military hierarchy, but through collaborative brainstorming sessions. She showed him the marketplace, where dozens of species traded goods and ideas freely. Throughout it all, Kale remained mostly silent, observing everything with his calculating golden eyes. Then something unexpected happened. As they walked through a residential area, a young Vakrian approached them. He wore the simple clothing of a prisoner of war, not armor. His scales were lighter than Kale's, marking him as younger. "War Prince Kale," the young Vakrian said respectfully. "Permission to speak?" Kale turned to him, surprised. "You are?" "Junior Commander Reth. I was captured 2 weeks ago when my fighter was disabled. I have been held here since. Have you been treated honorably?" "That's what I wanted to speak about, War Prince." Reth hesitated, then continued. "These humans, they treated my wounds. They gave me books to read, including translations of your own writings. They asked my opinion on their translations of Vakrian military poetry. They've shown me their colony, their lives, their way of thinking. And—" Kale's voice was hard. "And I no longer know what honor means, War Prince. I was taught that strength comes from conquest and hierarchy. But these humans show a different kind of strength. They cooperate instead of dominate. They adapt instead of maintain rigid perfection. They choose to see potential allies instead of only enemies." Reth looked directly at Kale. "You taught us to seek worthy adversaries. But War Prince, what if the worthiest adversaries are the ones who make us question everything we thought we knew about strength?" Kale was silent for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Hana seized the moment. "War Prince, you wrote that true greatness comes from being challenged, from growing beyond what we were. You questioned whether endless conquest truly brings honor. Here's your answer." She gestured to the colony around them. "You can defeat us in battle. We know that. But you can't defeat what we represent. The choice to be more than our nature demands. The decision to cooperate instead of conquer. The strength to keep trying new approaches even when we're outmatched. You're asking me to see weakness as strength." "No, sir. I'm asking you to see different strength as still strength. You measure worth by how well someone fights. We measure worth by how well someone adapts, endures, and transforms. Yes, you can destroy us. But you can't destroy the idea that there might be another way. And that idea is what makes us worthy." Kale looked at his young soldier, then at the colony around him, then back at Hana. "You have given me much to consider. Lieutenant, that's all I ask, War Prince. I will return to my ship now. I will meditate on what I have seen. Your 24 hours are almost complete." As Kale and his guards returned to their shuttle, Jiwan appeared at Hana's side. "Did it work?" "I don't know," Hana admitted, watching the shuttle lift off. "I showed him everything I could. Now it's up to him." The shuttle disappeared into the sky, returning to the Crimson Sovereign. In a few hours, the 24-hour ceasefire would end. And then they would learn whether philosophy could truly triumph over warfare. The 24 hours expired at exactly 1400 hours station time. The coalition fleet braced for attack. Every weapon was charged. Every crew member was at battle stations. In the tactical center, Admiral Choi stood with his hand hovering over the general alert button. "Any movement from the Vakrian fleet?" he asked. "Negative, sir. They're holding position. How long past deadline?" 3 minutes and counting. The tension was unbearable. Hana stood at her station, staring at the displays showing the massive Vakrian armada. Somewhere in that fleet, War Prince Kale was making his decision. Had her demonstration been enough? Or had she simply given him intelligence about human weaknesses? 5 minutes past deadline. Still no movement. "Maybe he's playing with us," Commander Park muttered. making us sweat before he attacks. Then the communications console lit up. Incoming transmission. It's fleet-wide broadcast from the Crimson Sovereign. War Prince Kale is transmitting on all frequencies. Put it through, Admiral Choi ordered. The holographic display activated. War Prince Kale appeared, standing on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, his officers stood at attention. I am War Prince Kale, commander of the Vacrian Empire's 7th Fleet. His voice was formal and clear. I address both my fleet and the Coalition forces. 24 hours ago, I challenged the humans to prove their worthiness as adversaries. They have done so in a manner I did not expect. Hannah held her breath. For 30 years, I have conquered in the name of the Vacrian Empire. I have followed our honor codes perfectly. Our formations, our traditions, our way of warfare. I believed this was strength. But Lieutenant Hana Kim of the Coalition has shown me something I had forgotten. True strength is not the perfection of what we already know. It is the courage to question, to adapt, to choose a different path, even when the old path is easier. Murmurs spread through the tactical center. What was happening? I hereby declare that the Vacrian forces under my command will cease all hostilities against the Coalition. This is not a retreat. This is not a strategic withdrawal. This is a philosophical stand. The humans have proven themselves worthy, not by defeating us in battle, but by showing us there is more to strength than conquest. He's surrendering? Someone whispered in disbelief. The Vacrian Empire will order me to continue this attack. I will refuse. Some of my commanders will follow me. Others will not. But I can no longer in honor pursue a conquest that destroys potential rather than tests it. Lieutenant Kim was correct. The worthiest adversaries are the ones who make us question everything we thought we knew about strength. The transmission ended. The tactical center erupted in chaos. This has to be a trick, Commander Park said. Vacrians don't surrender. They don't refuse orders. It's against everything they believe. But sensors showed something extraordinary happening. The Vacrian fleet was splitting. Some ships were breaking formation and moving away from the Crimson Sovereign. Others were forming up around Kale's flagship in a defensive posture. The Vacrian fleet is fighting itself, Captain Tyvan reported, his voice filled with wonder. Approximately 40% are staying loyal to War Prince Kale. The rest are maintaining Imperial orders. Imperial Command is transmitting now, the communications officer said. They're ordering Kale to resume the attack or face execution for treason. Admiral Choi looked at Hana. Lieutenant Kim, this is your moment. What do you recommend we do? Every eye in the tactical center turned to her. The rookie who had started all of this with a crazy idea about cultural understanding. Hana took a deep breath. We protect Kale's forces. He stood up for his principles. Now we stand up for ours. We showed him that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Now we prove we meant it. You want us to defend the enemy? Commander Park asked incredulously. He's not the enemy anymore, sir. He's someone who chose a different path. If we abandon him now, we prove that everything I showed him was a lie. But if we protect him, we demonstrate that humans don't just talk about cooperation. We live it. Admiral Choi was quiet for a moment. Then he opened a secure channel to Coalition High Command. The discussion took 10 minutes. Finally, he turned back to his staff. Coalition Council has voted. By a narrow margin, they've authorized us to offer asylum to War Prince Kale and any Vacrian forces who stand with him. In exchange, Kale will provide military intelligence and cultural expertise. He'll become the foundation of a potential Vacrian resistance movement. This is going to be politically explosive, Captain Tyvan observed. Yes, it will. But Lieutenant Kim is right. Either our values mean something, or they're just convenient tactics. Admiral Choi opened the fleet-wide channel. All coalition forces form defensive perimeter around Vakrian ships showing loyalty to War Prince Kale. We're offering them protection. The fleet moved into position. Coalition ships that had been fighting Vakrians just hours ago now placed themselves between Kale's forces and the Imperial fleet. The standoff lasted 3 hours. More Vakrian ships defected to Kale's position every few minutes. The Imperial commander sent increasingly desperate threats. Finally, Imperial reinforcements arrived, and for a moment it looked like the situation would explode into a three-way battle. Then War Prince Kale transmitted one more message. This time it was directed at his own people, broadcast on every Vakrian frequency. I am War Prince Kale. For 30 years I have served the Empire with perfect loyalty. But loyalty to power is not the same as loyalty to truth. Our Empire has lost its way. We pursue conquest without purpose, victory without honor. We have become what I described in my writings 15 years ago, prisoners of our own perfection, locked into patterns we cannot escape. His voice grew stronger. I do not know if cooperation with other species is truly superior to conquest. I do not know if the humans are right about the nature of strength. But I know this: we will never learn the answers if we refuse to question. I invite any Vakrian who shares these doubts to join me, not in betraying our culture, but in finding a new path that honors what we could become rather than what we have always been. The words were powerful. More ships defected. Within an hour, nearly half of the Vakrian fleet had chosen Kale over the Empire. The Imperial commander, faced with a potential civil war in coalition space and uncertain of victory, made the difficult choice to withdraw. His remaining fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them threats of future retribution. But for now, the battle was over. Not through violence, but through the power of ideas. 3 weeks later, Hannah stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, a newly established facility built jointly by coalition and defected Vakrian forces. Through the viewport, she could see ships from dozens of species working together. Human engineers collaborating with Vakrian tactical specialists. Insectoid medics training with Vakrian healers. Cultural exchange programs starting to bridge centuries of conflict. Commander Kim. The promotion had come through yesterday, along with a dozen other honors she still felt unworthy of. Enjoying the view? She turned to find War Prince Kale approaching. He wore a modified version of his armor now, stripped of Imperial symbols and marked instead with new insignia representing the Vakrian Free Alliance, as his group now called themselves. Just thinking about how strange all of this is, Hannah admitted. A few weeks ago, we were trying to kill each other, and now we build together. Kale looked out at the station. I have been reading more human philosophy. You have a concept called paradigm shift, the moment when old patterns break and new ones become possible. That's what this is? Perhaps. Or perhaps it is simply two groups of beings choosing to try something different. He looked at her. You changed the course of galactic history, Commander. How does it feel? Terrifying, honestly. The Vakrian Empire still exists. They still hate us. Some of the coalition species think we're naive for trusting you. This could all fall apart tomorrow. It could, Kale agreed. But it might not. And the possibility that it might not is more valuable than any certain conquest I could have achieved. He paused. I have been training coalition officers in Vakrian tactical doctrine. It is ... different than I expected. They learn quickly, but they always ask why instead of simply memorizing. It is frustrating and fascinating in equal measure. Hannah smiled. That's humans for you. We question everything. Yes, and that is exactly why you are worthy adversaries. Kale turned to go, then stopped. One more thing, Commander. You were mocked as a rookie. They dismissed your ideas. How did you maintain your conviction when everyone doubted you? I didn't always, Hana admitted. I had moments where I thought they were right, that I was just an inexperienced kid playing at strategy. But I had spent 2 years studying your culture. I knew I understood something important, even if I couldn't prove it yet. Sometimes you have to trust your knowledge, even when no one else does. Wise words from someone so young. I had a good teacher, Hana said, gesturing to the Vacrian philosophy texts on her datapad. Your writings about honor and strength taught me more than you know. Kale made a sound that might have been Vacrian laughter. Then perhaps we taught each other. That seems appropriately human. He left, and Hana turned back to the viewport. Below, in the diplomatic section of the station, she could see Juan teaching a mixed class of human and Vacrian engineers. Cultural exchange sessions were happening in a dozen conference rooms. Former enemies were slowly, cautiously becoming something new. The war wasn't over. The Vacrian Empire still threatened. Political tensions remained high. But something had changed. A door had opened that hadn't existed before. And it had all started because one mocked rookie refused to accept that war was the only option. Hana smiled. Maybe being underestimated wasn't such a bad thing. It meant nobody saw you coming when you changed the rules of the game. Her communicator buzzed. Admiral Choi wanted her in tactical command. Apparently, there were reports of Vacrian resistance cells forming in Imperial space, inspired by Kale's stand. They needed someone who understood both cultures to analyze the situation. The rookie had become the expert. And the expert had work to do. Hana took one last look at the station, at the impossible cooperation happening around her, then headed to her new assignment. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and full of potential, exactly the way humans liked it.